On most online lists of the greatest or most popular superheroes of all time, Batman ranks first. He's always been ranked first on my personal list as well, ever since I met the character in the 2001 TV series Justice League and its sequel series Justice League Unlimited. Let's take a look at some clips from these shows to see why he resonated so much.
Flee. Impressive. No one has ever avoided my Omega Beam.
Batman to all points. I could use some air support, since I can't fly. At all. Now would be good.
Who are you working for? Ertem eta stolnemat.
So yeah, Batman's awesome. The only one of the original 7 Justice League members without superpowers, he was there because, more than any other hero, he earned it. So the question is, why is Batman the most popular superhero of all time? What about him resonates with so many people? And what exactly does he represent? Let's take a look, starting with his origin. As most Americans could tell you, Bruce Wayne is the child of loving parents Thomas and Martha, the richest family in Gotham City. One night, on the way back from a thrilling action movie at the theater, a thug holds his family at gunpoint, demanding his father's wallet and his mother's pearl necklace. The thug shoots Thomas and Martha, leaving young Bruce on his knees, crying over his parents' corpses. From then on, he vows to avenge his parents' deaths by waging a one-man war on crime. So what can we learn from this tragedy? Batman has his innocence taken from him, and is forced to grow up too fast. Instead of crumbling under the burden of trauma, however, he embraces it, using it to make him more powerful than he ever could have been before. As clinical psychologist Robin S. Rosenberg says, he makes meaning of trauma in a few days, where it takes the rest of us several years. He takes his greatest fear, bats, and makes them into his greatest strength. We see this transformation in Batman Begins, when Christian Bale, as Bruce Wayne, first enters the Batcave and kneels to the ground as bats swarm around him. He's scared, but he decides then and there to rise up in his fear and surround himself with it, taking control over it. The bat is the perfect symbol, because of its association with vampires. Just as a vampire sucks the lifeblood of others for its own life, so does Batman take criminals' lifeblood, darkness and fear, and make it the power that he wields over them. Part of the reason Batman stories, and especially his origin, are so powerful is because they are essential descriptions of the human condition, and in many places even directly parallel religious texts. In the story of Genesis, Eve is wooed to eat the fruit of the tree of knowledge by a serpent who says, "God knows that when you eat of the tree, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." Bruce watching his parents die is like Adam and Eve eating the fruit. Before, he was good because he was innocent. But now, he knows good from evil, and to do good when you know evil is that much harder. The next day, God comes to go on his daily walk with Adam, but Adam hides, ashamed of his newfound nakedness. When most of us are confronted with knowledge of evil, we are like Adam. We cower and hide, and are afraid to walk with God. But Batman isn't afraid, and he never will be again. As part of their punishment, God decrees to Adam and Eve that, "Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil you will eat food from it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread until you return to the ground." Just as Adam and Eve's loss of innocence curses them to work indefinitely to sustain themselves until their death, so must Batman toil indefinitely, must sacrifice, in order to sustain his city. This sacrifice also leads us to the Jesus analogy, Batman sacrifices the work of his life to the cause of redeeming his city's sins. Just as, in the Christian tradition, Jesus sacrifices his own life to redeem our sins. You've probably heard Batman stories and superhero stories more generally called modern mythology, and that's not surprising when you realize the way they parallel actual mythology and religious stories. And of course, there are several allusions to God and religion in superhero media. Injustice: Gods Among Us, the video game, Justice League: Gods and Monsters, the movie, and Kingdom Come, the comic miniseries, to name a few. See, Batman is the distilled truth of hundreds of writers, only the most meaningful stories passed down. As Travis Langley writes in Batman and Psychology, Batman stories represent what hundreds of writers and artists over half a century thought and felt and believed about who and what we are. Now, if you believe in the Judeo-Christian God, then it makes sense that stories imitating those ones would be so successful. But if you don't believe these stories come from a greater power, our best explanation of them is that they emerged from hundreds of different stories being told by as many storytellers, with only the most meaningful ones being passed to the next generation, until eventually the stories that were most cherished were written down and became scripture, just as the most meaningful Batman stories are lauded and recreated in the next version of the character. Dennis O'Neil, legendary Batman comic author and editor, wrote that Batman exists in not a literal reality, but a way of existing in people's heads that extends past fiction into the realm of post-industrial mythology. But why does Batman stand out from all the other superheroes? Let's take a look at him in comparison to some of the other all-time greats, starting with Spider-Man. Spider-Man is given great power, chooses not to use that power to stop a criminal, and then that criminal murders his uncle. Through this, he learns that he must, with his great power, accept great responsibility. Batman, however, is completely powerless when his parents are murdered. He had no power that he could have used to save them, so he chooses to take great responsibility and achieves great power in order to do so. And then there's Superman. Superman represents determinism. Natural abilities make you great. Batman represents free will. People can make themselves great. As Stephen King wrote in his piece Why I Chose Batman, Superman seemed too preordained. The concept of invulnerability made him seem to be a hero who had an unfair advantage. Being good should always be harder than being bad. The difference between the two is demonstrated well in Frank Miller's seminal graphic novel The Dark Knight Returns. In it, an aged Batman fights a Superman who has made himself an agent of the US government. Batman v Superman adapted some aspects of this epic comic. It did a lot of it poorly, but it actually adapted this bit of dialogue quite well. Let's take a look.
I bet your parents taught you that you mean something. That you're here for a reason. My parents taught me a different lesson. Dying in the gutter for no reason at all.
They taught me the world only makes sense if you force it to.
Superman believes that the world makes sense, while Batman makes it make sense. Superman believes the world must be just, and so he simply does his duty to fulfill that end. Batman understands that the world isn't just, and so he remakes it in his own image of justice, just as he remakes himself as an image of justice when he becomes Batman. You can see Superman's approach in one of his most iconic appearances, All-Star Superman. When Kryptonian astronauts come to Earth and question why he hasn't remade Earth in the image of Krypton, he responds, "That's not fair. What right do I have to impose my values on anyone?" Superman doesn't want to wield his power over others. But Batman's whole mission is to uncompromisingly impose his morals on his corrupted city. If he didn't, how could he hope to save it? Batman's approach to life is echoed by Albert Camus in his philosophy called Absurdism. Let's take a look. Albert Camus built on the work of Soren Kierkegaard to create Absurdism, a philosophy that defines absurdity as the confrontation between the human need for meaning and the unreasonable silence of the world, and offers three choices when facing this confrontation. First, suicide, which avoids the conflict by making a confession that life is not worth living. Second, a so-called leap of faith, which avoids the conflict by declaring that the universe does have meaning beyond the subjective self. Third, embracing the absurd condition. If confronting the absurd is realizing that the universe is without absolutes, then embracing it is choosing to live without appeal and be truly free to forge your own meaning and purpose. Batman's stories, in many ways, are about several people's confrontations with the absurd through tragedy. Batman himself confronts the absurd when his parents are killed for no reason at all. He then has to force the world to make sense. Superman avoids the confrontation by taking a leap of faith and declaring that the universe is just. Batman's villains as well confront the absurd through tragedy. Bane from The Dark Knight Rises confronts the absurd when his face is mutilated after helping Talia al Ghul escape from the pit. He dedicates his life to freeing people from prisons everywhere, but doesn't realize that he is more tyrannical than those he is overthrowing. His goal seems to be to murder everyone who had been supporting the leap of faith of society. Their punishment is to walk on ice until it cracks and they drown, itself a metaphor for their confrontation with the absurd. You can only walk on the leap of faith for so long until you fall through the ice and drown. Bane's intended result is something akin to forced suicide. And then there's Catwoman, Selina Kyle, who confronts the absurd when her mother commits suicide, and later her father dies of alcohol poisoning. Both times she finds the corpses. She escapes the destitute slums she was raised in, and climbs her way to high society by stealing from mobsters and museums, depending on the interpretation. And there's Mr. Freeze, Dr. Victor Freeze, who confronts the absurd when his wife, Nora, is diagnosed with a terminal illness. He cryogenically freezes her while he searches for a cure at GothCorp. When the CEO Ferris Boyle comes to cut his funding and shut off the machine that's keeping Nora alive, he begs to continue research and threatens Boyle with a handgun. His life rested on the leap of faith that he could find a cure for Nora, and now it has come crumbling down. There's a scuffle, and Freeze is knocked into a table of cryogenic chemicals, which alter his body chemistry so that he can't survive at temperatures above -50 degrees Fahrenheit. He builds a cold suit to sustain himself, and vows revenge against Boyle, and justice for Nora. And of course, there's the Joker. The Joker doesn't always have an origin, but perhaps the most famous version is that from Alan Moore's seminal one-shot story, The Killing Joke. In it, the unnamed man who will become the Joker is a struggling comedian whose wife is pregnant. He agrees to help some mobsters break into the chemical plant he used to work at to make ends meet, but the night of the job his wife is electrocuted while testing a baby bottle heater, taking with her the unborn child. He tries to back out of the job, but the mobsters threaten him. They dress him up like a supervillain to make it seem like he's the ringleader, and when the police and then Batman show up, he jumps into a vat of chemicals, which dyes his skin white and his hair green and drives him insane, turning him into the Joker. Here's an iconic moment from The Killing Joke, in animated and comic form.
I've proven my point. Gordon's been driven mad. I've demonstrated there's no difference between me and everyone else. All it takes is one bad day. That's how far the world is from where I am. Just one bad day. You had a bad day once, am I right? Oh, I know I am. I can tell. You had a bad day and everything changed. Dressing up like a flying rat doesn't hide it, it screams it. You had a bad day and it drove you as crazy as everybody else, only you won't admit it. You have to keep pretending that life makes sense, that there's some point to all this struggling. You make me wanna puke.
The Joker's one bad day is his confrontation with the absurd. In The Dark Knight, the Joker is a self-proclaimed agent of chaos. Just like in The Killing Joke, his goal is to prove just how fragile stability is. Let's take a look.
See, their morals, their code. It's a bad joke. Dropped at the first sign of trouble. They're only as good as the world allows them to be. I'll show you. When the chips are down, these civilized people, they'll eat each other. See, I'm not a monster. I'm just ahead of the curve. Look what I did to this city with a few drums of gas and a couple of bullets. You know what I noticed? Nobody panics when things go according to plan. Even if the plan is horrifying. Introduce a little anarchy. upset the established order, and everything becomes chaos. I'm an agent of chaos. Oh, and you know the thing about chaos? It's fair.
As an agent of chaos, the Joker's goal is to force as many people as possible to confront the absurd, very similar to his goal in The Killing Joke. He embraces the absurd universe, though not in the way that Camus intended. If the Joker is an agent of chaos, this leaves Batman as an agent of order, struggling to maintain others' belief in security. Comic writer and TV producer Greg Weisman had this to say about Batman's role when I asked him about it at Sacramento Comic-Con.
His mission in life is to make sure that no one else ever has to endure the trauma that he endured.
We can see the same idea echoed in The Dark Knight.
Because sometimes truth isn't good enough. Sometimes people deserve more. Sometimes people deserve to have their faith rewarded.
It seems Batman's mission is actually to stop everyone from having to confront the absurd. He allows Gotham to take a leap of faith because he's there to catch their fall and stop their philosophical suicide. This is why Batman has the no-kill rule. To kill another person would be to declare that person's life worthless and allow the world to stop making sense. In Mark Waid and Alex Ross's miniseries Kingdom Come, an older Batman considers letting the out-of-control new generation of superhumans kill each other off. Superman reminds him who he is, saying, "More than anyone in the world, when you scratch everything else away from Batman, you're left with someone who doesn't want to see anybody die." This is why the Joker wants Batman to kill, and especially to kill him. We see this struggle come up in The Dark Knight when Batman has the chance to run the Joker over. And again, when the Joker challenges him to save either Harvey or Rachel.
I have one rule.
Oh, then that's the rule you'll have to break to know the truth.
Which is?
The only sensible way to live in this world is without rules. And tonight you're gonna break your one rule.
This is also the conflict that Jason Todd presents Batman with in the animated movie Under the Red Hood. Jason Todd, the second Robin, is killed by the Joker and then resurrected. This is his confrontation with the absurd. The returned Jason becomes Red Hood, an anti-hero who breaks Batman's rule by killing criminals instead of turning them in, which is his way of embracing the absurd. Let's take a look.
Is that what you think this is about? That you let me die? I don't know what clouds your judgment worse. Your guilt or your antiquated sense of morality. Bruce, I forgive you for not saving me. But why? Why on God's earth is he still alive? You know, I thought I'd be the last person you'd ever let him hurt. If it had been you that he'd beat to a bloody pulp, if he had taken you from this world, I would have done nothing but search the planet for this pathetic pile of evil death-worshipping garbage and send him off to hell.
Jason and the Joker both want not to destroy Batman, but to destroy the leap of faith he allows others to make, and force him to sink to their level. As Travis Langley writes in Batman and Psychology, the Joker and Jason want Batman to break his rules. Both want substantiation for their respective opinions that rules and order do not work, although neither would keep seeking such support if fully secure in his beliefs. He is the standard by which they judge themselves. Here, Langley asserts that, deep down, Jason and Joker actually haven't embraced the absurd, that they've just staked their lives on another leap of faith, that Batman's moral code can be broken. If Batman kills the Joker might be dead, but he will have won. He knows that if he allows himself to waver in his mission, he loses his righteousness and admits defeat to the absurd universe that killed his parents. He cannot accept that. He explains this to Jason in Under the Red Hood.
You don't understand. I don't think you've ever understood.
What? What, your moral code just won't allow for that? It's too hard to cross that line?
No! God Almighty! No. It'd be too damned easy. All I've ever wanted to do is kill him. A day doesn't go by when I don't think about subjecting him to every horrendous torture he's dealt out to others, and then end him. But if I do that, if I allow myself to go down into that place, I'll never come back.
His butler Alfred also echoes this sentiment in the critically acclaimed animated movie Batman: Mask of the Phantasm.
I couldn't save her, Alfred.
I don't think she wanted to be saved, sir. Vengeance blackens the soul, Bruce. I always feared you would become that which you fought against. You walk the edge of that abyss every night. But you haven't fallen in, and I thank heaven for that. But Andrea fell into that pit years ago. And no one, not even you, could have pulled her back.
In The Dark Knight Returns, the Joker snaps his own neck to frame Batman for his death. In doing so, though, he admits final defeat to Batman. So, we know who the persona of Batman is relative to other superheroes and to his villains. But who is Bruce Wayne at his core? Let's take a look. Batman has to become more than a man to strike fear into the hearts of criminals. Let's take a look at a clip from Batman Begins that illustrates this point.
People need dramatic examples to shake them out of apathy, and I can't do that as Bruce Wayne. As a man, I'm flesh and blood. I can be ignored, I can be destroyed, but as a symbol, I can be incorruptible. I can be everlasting.
And he has to act as playboy billionaire Bruce Wayne to avoid suspicion. In the podcast The Arkham Sessions, Dr. Andrea Letamendi and Brian Ward break down episodes of Batman the Animated Series from a psychological perspective. Andrea had this to say about Bruce's playboy billionaire identity.
It's clear that his Bruce Wayne identity is more of a persona. It's more to put this very highly visible, high profile character out there. And I think that it serves a couple of purposes. One, certainly he runs a business. He has to continue this public identity so that his very private alter ego, of course known as Batman, is protected. And the other reason is that there's a psychological reason. It sort of distances him from other people. He's kind of a jerk, right? That's not him. He behaves like that because it's a way that he continues to stay disconnected from real human connections.
Ultimately, though, he is neither of these at his core level. As Travis Langley writes in Batman and Psychology, as this Bruce Wayne, Christian Bale actually plays three roles: the reckless billionaire playboy, the symbol who must be more than a man, and the flesh and blood mortal his surrogate father Alfred knows best. Greg Weisman echoed this sentiment at Sacramento Comic-Con.
The bat is a symbol he's put on to strike fear in evildoers. The playboy Bruce Wayne is an act he presents, but the real Bruce Wayne is neither of those people.
Batman teaches us about wearing masks, whether they hide our faces or are our faces. Ultimately, he has to become more than human to leave a legacy in the world. Mask of the Phantasm is a great movie, largely because it shows Bruce's struggle to be human while also being Batman.
It doesn't mean I don't care anymore. I don't want to let you down, honest, but it just doesn't hurt so bad anymore. You can understand that, can't you? Look, I can give money to the city, they can hire more cops, let someone else take the risk, but it's different now. Please, I need it to be different now. I know I made a promise, but I didn't see this coming. I didn't count on being happy. Please, tell me that it's okay.
Maybe they already have. Maybe they sent me.
and ultimately he can't be happy after Andrea, his love interest, flees the country, and Bruce commits to Batman, destined to spend his whole life reliving his parents' murders. In fact, in order to open the secret passage to the Batcave, he has to turn his grandfather clock to the time of his parents' death, literally passing through that moment every single time he becomes Batman. In this way, he humbles us. According to Batman, to be human is mutually exclusive with superheroism. But he also inspires us. As Stephen King wrote, Batman, however, was just a guy. Anyone could be Batman. It's just a matter of what they'd have to give up. In addition to splitting himself into different identities, Batman divides the world around him into good and evil, with nothing in between. He has to, or he couldn't justify beating up criminals on a nightly basis. One of Batman's most famous mantras is that criminals are a superstitious, cowardly lot. This begs the question, are people truly good or evil, or just victims of circumstance? Batman himself could be proof of either. Did he become what he was because of what happened to him, or did he become what he was in spite of what happened to him? This is probably also a source of Batman's appeal. We wish the world were as simple as Batman wants it to be. Tim Erskine explores Batman's black and white thinking in his song, Batman.
You lost in your defense, a pain you could not countenance. The sword had found its mark, dividing your world into light and dark. I used to see the world as wrong or right, but I couldn't tell the night from the day. I want to see the world as black and white, but all I see is gray.
Batman is lost in his defense of Gotham City, dividing his world into light and dark. He can't see the gray of the world. Batman's absolute approach, in separating man from hero and good from evil, is part of what makes him the hero he is, but it's also the source of his greatest shortcomings. Batman's greatest shortcomings are usually his relationships with other people. They often end in disaster, and it's invariably because of his absolute approach to the world. The first example is with Andrea Beaumont in Mask of the Phantasm, when he's left to choose between being Batman and being happy. Ultimately, though he tries to give up fighting crime for Andrea, she flees the country before they can settle down. And when they get a second chance years later, Bruce has so fully committed to Batman that he knows there's no chance for their relationship to continue. We see the problems with Batman's black and white worldview arise again with Catwoman. Is she a crook, or is she ultimately good at heart? And how can she be both? As Catwoman says in Catwoman Anodyne, "My world is all just shades of gray, Batman. That's why you'll never really understand me. It's about good people being forced into bad situations. That's my territory, in between right and wrong, which is a place that you can never go." And then there's Dick Grayson, the first Robin, who is raised in Batman's shadow and ultimately decides to leave and become his own man. In the Batman the Animated Series episode Old Wounds, Dick realizes how he is different than Bruce.
Where's the Joker? I don't know.
Daddy!
Remember now?
Batman, not like this. Not in front of his family.
The sooner he talks, the sooner we leave.
I'm out of here now.
Batman can't see this man as anything other than a criminal, as evil. He can't accept that good people sometimes do bad things. Robin does see his humanity, and can't participate in Batman's simplified version of the world. On the Arkham Sessions podcast, Brian Ward had the following to say about this scene.
I think Batman looked through the window, saw what was going on, and chose to crash through the window. Like, I think he chose to show this scene to that family.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Dick is like, you take it too far. There is a line I am not willing to cross. But I think Batman probably looked through that window and went, time to cross a line.
On Young Justice, we see a young Dick Grayson struggle with many of the same issues.
I always wanted, expected, to grow up and become him. And the hero bit, I'm still all in. But that thing inside of him, the thing that drives him to sacrifice everything for the sake of his mission, that's not me. I don't want to be the Batman anymore.
Robin can't and won't sacrifice everything for the sake of his mission. He still wants to be a hero, but he can't split himself in two the way Batman does. In some interpretations, Batman seems to be grooming Robin to take his place one day, to assume his mission and make the same sacrifices. We see this interpretation in Batman the Animated Series.
I thought we had the same goals.
Things change. I changed. The game's over, Batman. I quit.
Robin, wait.
Batman believed they had the same goals, but he was wrong. Dick grew up and changed. He had been smothered his whole life by what Batman wanted, and in this scene he finally realizes what he wants. In other interpretations, Batman never intended for Robin to take his place. His goal was to save Robin from the burdens he placed upon his own shoulders. We see this interpretation in Young Justice.
I shouldn't be surprised, since you indoctrinated Robin into crime fighting at the ripe old age of 9.
Robin needed to help bring the men who murdered his family to justice.
So he could turn out like you?
So that he wouldn't.
Gray Weisman, showrunner of Young Justice, had this to say about this creative choice.
So this notion that he's this antisocial, psychopathic character doesn't work for me, doesn't make any sense to me. This notion that he can't engage with the people he cares about doesn't make any sense to me, because he's the world's greatest detective, and if you're a great detective, you've got to be able to read people. I don't think he's as locked in as a lot of interpretations show him to be. That's why on Young Justice you don't see him fighting with Dick Grayson or not getting along with his teammates. He's tough and he's stern, but he's still a human being, because that's his job. He's to make the world more human for other people.
On the podcast Whelmed, the Young Justice Files, Rich Howard explains the difference between the two in terms of leadership.
One of the things that makes Dick Grayson so much different than Batman is this kind of two sides of the same coin ability to lead. Batman leads because Batman is listened to, I should say, because they know that he's 10 steps ahead of everyone else. You do it because not doing it is stupid. You listen to what Batman says and you expect that. You do what he tells you to do because he tells you to do it. Dick Grayson is a leader not because you do what he tells you to do. He's a leader because you want to do it. Dick Grayson is a leader that inspires confidence, not just in his own skills, but confidence and strength in the people that he's working with and the teamwork that he inspires in them. People follow Dick because he inspires them. They trust him in a way that people don't trust Batman.
Batman's leadership emerges from his superhero persona. Batman is above everyone else, always 10 steps ahead, as Rich puts it. Dick's, however, comes from his humanity, the genuine trust that others have in him. Dick isn't afraid to let his humanity and his heroism blend together. He doesn't see the hero-human conflict as irresolvable like Batman does. Whether in anger or in more peaceful self-actualization, Dick becomes a new hero, Nightwing. He becomes his own man, and he learns from the mistakes of his father. Batgirl, Barbara Gordon, also leaves Batman. In Batman Beyond, an elderly Bruce Wayne coaches Terry McGinnis into becoming the new Batman. At one point, Terry meets with an older Barbara to learn about her history as Batman's sidekick.
On the street, it was like ballet. We were the perfect duo. But for Bruce, Batman, there was nothing but the street. Eventually, that gets old. Time comes when you gotta hang up the cape. But Bruce wouldn't. Or couldn't. So I left, and never looked back. No, I don't hate him. I hate what he's become. Such a great man. So alone.
Barbara leaves because Bruce couldn't stop dividing himself between man and hero, while she couldn't go on living a double life. It's not him that she hates, she says, it's what he became that wasn't really him. In the end, he's alone, and it's his own fault. Terry echoes this sentiment in the Justice League Unlimited episode Epilogue.
How could you do it to me, Bruce?
The only thing that matters is the mission. You know that.
What about people, Bruce? Dick, Barbara, Tim, Selena? They all loved you, but eventually every single one of them left you. Ever wonder why?
Not for an instant. They quit because when it came down to it, they didn't have the heart for the mission. Are you about to quit too?
Terry saw how being Batman pushed all of Bruce's loved ones away, and he sees this happening to himself too.
What's this all about?
Your safety. You know how much I care about you.
Sure. Why else keep dating for 15 years?
You know why I can't marry you.
If the bad guys ever found out I was Batman, they'd try to get to me by hurting you. Blah, blah, blah.
It's nothing to joke about.
You're right. There could be supervillains hiding in the tall grass.
I'm poisoned, Dana. Cursed.
You're silly, McGinnis.
It's not silly for me to want to keep you safe. Every moment we're together, you're risking your life.
I've told you 100 times. That's a risk I'm willing to take.
I'm taking the choice out of your hands.
What are you saying?
I'm saying we're done. I'm sorry.
In the end, he doesn't want to sacrifice his personal connections the way Bruce did, so he quits.
The world does need a Batman, and it always will. The mantle of Batman is an honor, Terry.
You know what, old man? All those years, turns out everybody was right. You are insane. Being Batman's no honor. It's a curse.
He chooses man over hero, just like everyone else in Bruce's life. But after speaking to Amanda Waller, he realizes, like Dick Grayson, that the human-hero dichotomy is a false one. He makes the same choice as Dick, keeping both parts of himself. He decides to go through with marrying Dana and upholding the mantle of the Bat at the same time. This all leaves us with one more biblical allusion. Batman is like Moses. He is the shepherd who shows his apprentices how to escape trauma and make a better life for themselves. Like Moses, he has a unique vision of a greater purpose, and though he is the truest and most devoted to the cause, he can't make it to the promised land. So why is Batman such a cultural phenomenon? He shows us how to turn our greatest fears into our greatest strengths. He shows us how to turn trauma into meaning, as opposed to destruction, like his villains often do. He shows us how to take personal responsibility for our lives and reach our full potential. He represents a worldview that, though we know it's too simple, we really wish were true. And he allows us to believe in something. Superman and Spider-Man aren't real, and never could be. But Batman may not be likely, but he is improbably possible, as Batman and Psychology author Travis Langley puts it. He makes the leap of faith we have to take to believe in a just world a little bit shorter, and is the perfect myth for a post-industrial society. And that is why Batman is the greatest superhero of all time. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching this video. It was my first time trying my hand at a video essay, and I really hope you liked it. If you did, you can subscribe, share with your friends, etc. I'd really appreciate it. Let me know in the comments if you think there are any other superheroes or supervillains who we could apply absurdism to, or maybe you think I misapplied it in the first place. Either way, I'd love to hear from you. Huge shout out to Professor Saldivar for teaching the class that inspired me to make this video in the first place. And I'll see you guys next time.